Today, Bitcoin hovers at the $100,000 mark after China retaliates with its own tariffs. And Ripple Labs' chief legal officer, Stuart Alderoty, reacts to the many crypto developments already in President Trump's second term. Prices mixed this morning after the U.S. paused its tariffs on Mexico and Canada for a month, though a 10% tariff on China remains, sparking a retaliation levy against the U.S. starting next week. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin traded at the $99,000 level, Ether rose 3% to $27.92, and XRP was flat at $2.62. Okay, before we get into our main story, a couple things you should know. White House AI and crypto czar David Sacks is holding a press conference joined by other lawmakers this afternoon to discuss how the Trump administration will work with Congress to regulate digital assets. That's slated to take place at 2:30 Eastern, which is just before this show publishes, but Sacks will be joining CNBC's Closing Bell Overtime at 4 p.m. Eastern, and you can check out the latest over at cnbc.com. Also, Republican Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee just proposed new rules for stablecoins. The Genius Act was brought forth by Senator Hagerty along with Senator Tim Scott, who chairs the Senate Banking Committee, Senator Cynthia Lummis, who was named as the first chair of the Senate Banking Subcommittee on Digital Assets, and Democrat Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York. A tweet from Senator Hagerty says the bill establishes a clear regulatory framework for stablecoins, something long requested by the crypto industry. All right, for our main story, yesterday, Crypto World's Mackenzie Sigalo spoke with Ripple Labs' chief legal officer, Stuart Alderoty, about David Sacks and his crypto efforts. Alderoty also shares his outlook for crypto regulation and the latest on Ripple's years-long battle with the SEC.
So we're a few weeks into the new Trump administration, and we've seen some changes that certainly signal a new regulatory stance on crypto. What's your reaction to these moves so far?
Look, I think it is fantastic. The industry has lived under a inexplicable war from the prior administration that really they were focused on driving crypto out of the country and not facilitating the technology at all. Overnight, after the election and after the inauguration, we have seen the new administration embrace the technology, looking to clear unnatural regulatory hurdles and saying that we want to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world. And for companies like Ripple that are born in the U.S., we've been around for 12 years, we're thrilled. 75% of our hiring after the election is now being brought onshore, where in the past, all of that hiring was happening offshore. We're looking to bring Ripple back to the U.S. and build in the U.S. So we're thrilled.
So when it comes to crypto reform in the U.S., it seems to be taking shape along three different paths. You've got Trump's executive order, policy changes made by federal regulators, and then there's action from Congress. And thus far, the most progress seems to be happening through that EO and policy changes at the SEC. So let's start there. This executive order from Trump making crypto a national priority. How important is that, and what does it mean for Ripple in particular?
So you're right. There are basically three legs of the stool here. You have what's happening at the executive branch with the president. What's happening at the regulatory level with the SEC, and then what's happening at Congress. The executive order, which basically reaffirmed the campaign promise that the president was going to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world, was an affirmation of that. The appointment of David Sacks is what's commonly known as the crypto czar, this standing up a working group for crypto, a review of all regulations. In other words, what do we need to do to stop this unnatural war on crypto that's been going on for the past 4 years and bring crypto back into the U.S.? That was quickly followed by, and again, independent of, the SEC. After the prior chair resigned, the new acting chair, Mark Ueda, very quickly issued a statement that said they're going to hit the reset button. The SEC is going to set up their own task force. an acknowledgement that what's happened for the past 4 years has made it really impossible for the industry to understand what does it even mean to comply with the laws in the U.S. That's great news. What the acting chair, Ada, also did was he rescinded some accounting guidance, which made it practically impossible for banks to custody crypto in the U.S. That's now been removed. So hopefully we'll see banks leaning in to custody crypto in the U.S. And then the last piece that you mentioned, Mackenzie, is Congress. And part of the executive order is a directive to David Sachs and the working group to come back with some recommendations as to what clear rules and regulations ultimately adopted by Congress can look like in the U.S. to set a framework so this industry can operate in the U.S., thrive in the U.S., and do so in a way that protects consumers, protects the integrity of the market, and keep bad actors out. So all of that is happening very quickly and very proactively.
So you mentioned David Sachs a moment ago. He's working closely with the White House as its new crypto and AI czar. He says he plans to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world. Have you or Ripple been involved in that initiative? Have you spoken with Sachs or other members of this new council about what we might expect to see in the months ahead?
Yeah, so we know David Sachs. We have been in communication with David Sachs. He, I think, is thinking about this thing the right way, and he is inclusive. He's looking for the industry to partner, a private-public partnership, to partner with the U.S. and with the administration and with the regulators to decide what do we need to do to really make this happen. So yes, we have been in contact with David Sachs. I imagine others have been in contact with David Sachs. We know him. We think he's the right person for this job.
So one other big area where members of the industry have fought for progress is in crypto regulation from Capitol Hill. I know that you said that, David Sachs, part of his job remit is to come up with recommendations for lawmakers. But have you or the Ripple team talked with members of Congress on that point? Are you anticipating any sort of bills to be tabled in the next few months?
So Ripple has been engaging with Congress for all throughout the last administration, all throughout the prior administration. We are very policy focused. And yes, have we continued those conversations with the new Congress? Yes. This is the most crypto-friendly Congress we will ever see. And we are in contact and with discussions. Again, this is nothing new. This is a continuation of discussions we've always had as to standing up, again, real world framework for the use, adoption of crypto in the U.S. that protects consumers, protects the integrity of the market, and keeps bad actors out. We're not going to do it alone. I think the industry needs to come together and cooperate with Congress. Ultimately, Congress owns the policy. The industry doesn't own the policy. But I think we can get there. And I do think that we are going to see some really good legislative process this year, maybe even a statute signed this year, both in terms of what we call a market structure bill, something that covers all aspects of how a crypto market would need to be regulated in the U.S., which would include everything from stablecoins to potentially decentralized finance. So there's a lot to do, but we have a very motivated Congress to get it done.
And what about Ripple's lawsuit with the SEC? Obviously, we've seen a sweeping change in policy at that regulator in just the last few weeks. And I'm wondering whether that's impacting litigation brought under the former SEC chair, Gary Gensler. So what's the latest on your case?
So as you know, Mackenzie, Ripple was sued way back in 2020. No allegations of fraud, no allegations of market manipulation, no allegations of consumer harm. In fact, the SEC couldn't even identify a single victim that suffered any loss. It was this lawsuit, which was basically you failed to come in and register with the SEC when the SEC knew that there was no mechanism for a crypto company to ever register with the SEC. This was part of the war on crypto. This was part of an effort to destroy the crypto industry through regulation by enforcement. We defended that case over 4 years. We spent $150 million in defense costs. We won. The SEC, under the prior administration, filed an appeal. And on January 15th, 5 days before the inauguration, they actually filed their opening brief in that appeal. I remain cautiously optimistic that the new administration under Paul Atkins, which hopefully I anticipate will be confirmed as the new SEC chair, will do away with these lawsuits that have, again, these non-fraud lawsuits, these victimless crime lawsuits. I think it's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's a waste of regulatory resources to pursue these lawsuits. So hopefully it'll be voluntarily dismissed. But until that time, we'll continue to defend. We'll file our responsive brief in the Second Circuit. But we're thinking about this really as background noise right now. We're leaning into the U.S., and we're thrilled to partner with this administration to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today. We'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.